Welcome to the Not Old Better Show on radio and podcast. The show covering all things health, wellness, culture, and more. The show for all of us who aren't old, we're better. Each week, we'll interview superstars, experts, and ordinary people doing extraordinary things, all related to this wonderful experience of getting better, not just older. Now, here's your host, the award-winning Paul Vogelzang.
Welcome to the Not Old Better Show on radio and podcast. I'm Paul Vogelzang, and today you're listening to our Inside Science interview series sponsored by Acorns. And today's show might change how you think about your next breath. Literally. We breathe in and out over 20 times a day. And with every breath, our nose takes in invisible information that stirs memories, emotions, cravings, warnings, and connections. But how often do we stop to think about what our nose is telling us? Our guest today is Dr. Jonas Olofsson, a cognitive scientist, professor of psychology at Stockholm University, and one of the world's leading experts on the sense of smell. His new book, The Forgotten Sense, The New Science of Smell and the Extraordinary Power of the Nose, is a runaway bestseller. It is fantastic, getting great reviews. We have Dr. Olofsson today. He's going to tell us all about this fascinating, deeply human exploration of something we often overlook until it's gone. In this conversation, we're talking about why our sense of smell is so vital to memory, emotional well-being, and intimacy, especially as we age. We'll also explore a few unexpected findings from Dr. Olofsson's research, including a surprising link between smell aversion and political beliefs. It's fascinating stuff. You're just going to love this. We're also going to find out more about why our noses are far more powerful and, of course, more personal than we've ever given them credit for. His answers, along with the rest of our interview, might surprise you. I know you're going to enjoy it. So settle in, breathe deep, and get ready for a truly sensory experience. I'm Paul Vogelzang. You're listening to the Not Old Better Show Inside Science interview series. Our guest today is Dr. Jonas Olofsson. Welcome to the show. Dr. Jonas Olofsson, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Paul. It's great to be here.
It's so nice to talk to you. We're going to talk today about your new book, The Forgotten Sense. I'm looking forward to this conversation. I'm somebody who often has said that I've got a very sensitive snout. And so I'm curious about this subject, and I'm curious about your take on it. We'll jump into the book, and I just really enjoyed it. I know our audience is going to be very interested in learning more. And why don't we start with one of the basic questions that certainly just jumped out at me as being this really kind of I didn't see this happening in the way in which our scent works. And let me just describe how you write about this, and you say that smell actually begins in the brain before a scent molecule even is really in our nose. And I just thought, oh, that is remarkable. That's really something that I need you to explain to us and maybe tell us what that really means for how we kind of react both emotionally and then physically to certain smells, especially as we're getting a little older.
Sure. Yeah. So that's a great question. So in our psychological understanding of our minds and how our brains work, there is this kind of new understanding. It's not really new, but in the recent years, people have been starting to understand how predictions of the future actually plays an important role in how we experience the world. So our brains constantly and often without us noticing, we anticipate what's going to happen next. So that allows us to kind of sort aside things that are expected and we don't have to worry more about it. But usually it's the unexpected things that stand out to us. And our brains respond very strongly to surprise. basically. And the sense of smell is no exception. And in fact, my work together with my group, we show that the sense of smell seems to be even more contingent on these predictions. And so how it works is that we make, based on what we see, what we hear, what we know, we can make a prediction of what we are going to smell. And when those predictions are either confirmed or violated, that changes how our brains perceive the smell. So unexpected smells are typically perceived as very bad, right? So we enter like like a back alley, and we smell something that's really nauseating, but it turns out that it is, maybe a cheese from a restaurant or something. So it's in a different context. It would have been like a pleasant smell, but the context makes it unpleasant. And so the brain sends signals out to the peripheral parts of the olfactory system and prepares that part of the brain to receive the right smells. So that the brain is already kind of in tune with what we think that we will be smelling. And that's an active part of smelling, basically. And so I think that opens up for a lot of kind of psychological, like a new psychological understanding of smell. It's not just that we are kind of bombarded with things in the environment, but we actually create impressions, and we do so actively even before the smells come into our nose, so to say.
It is just fascinating how this works, because we're often told that if one of our senses goes, perhaps another is extenuated. Is that kind of what you're referring to too? For example, if we might lose our vision, we might even be more surprised walking into this alley because we're bombarded, and that just is heightened because our sense of smell is extenuated.
Yeah. So that might happen, or we might just be kind of oriented towards certain sensory impressions. So some people are very olfactory oriented, and they tend to, they are interested in perfumes and tea flavors. They have a ton of teas in their at home, and they also remember people smell very vividly. Who smell do they like, and who smell do they don't like? And usually women are more, about that kind of olfaction is a bigger part of women's lives than men on average, but there are many exceptions, of course. So it's also like a type of almost like a personality trait, you could call it. And for those people, if they lose their sense of smell, that really erases a big part of what makes life interesting and enjoyable.
Is it true that because you hear this myth often about older adults losing a sense of smell as we age? Is that something that actually occurs? Did you find?
Yeah, it does, and but with everything that has to do with aging, it's sometimes easy to kind of lean into stereotypes, but in fact, older people are very very mixed group. So the diversity becomes greater as we age, and so it's sometimes it's easier to communicate one simple message about aging, and I know you're interested in kind of making a kind of a more nuanced perspective on aging, and cognitive abilities, brain functions, they can be very excellent in old age, but then you have some people who are on the declining slope, and the idea is using different types of assessments to identify and help those who are on that trajectory, and to do that before they really slide down too deeply. So the sense of smell might be one of those markers, but again, it's the sense of smell can be diminished for a number of different reasons. One of them has to do with sort of declining brain health that will end up resulting in dementia, but many people might have a poor sense of smell due to COVID, other viruses, and sort of the accumulated wear and tear. The sense of smell is very sensitive like that because it's exposed in the nasal cavity. So different types of virus infections that happen throughout our lives might diminish our sense of smell cumulatively. And so the way I typically describe it is, if you have a good sense of smell, if you're over 65, that's a very good sign that your brain is in good shape. Mm-hmm. If you have a poor sense of smell, that could be due to a number of different reasons. So there's no real need to worry about, sometimes people are worried about risk of dementia, etc. But it could be really anything. But a good sense of smell is definitely a good sign.
One of the other interesting things I found in your book that really surprised me as well, the entire topic was just fascinating. And you talk about this idea that really brought to mind kind of almost commentary on the moment that we're experiencing. You talk about how smell aversion takes place and that there is a connection perhaps to ideology, that there's a research that you discuss that links almost some disgust with authoritarianism and authoritarian political beliefs with an olfactory sensation. And I just thought that is really amazing. What did you find about this? And tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so it's maybe not as far-fetched as it might sound, because psychological researchers have argued for some time that this authoritarian disposition is a kind of a way to protect the body. You want a society that's very stable, right? So and where there is no real external influence. So it's a way of kind of shielding yourself from potential risk of disease by creating, shutting the borders down, and you don't have much social mobility, and you have a close circle of friends, etc. So those types of characteristics can be viewed as a disease avoidance type of psychology. And our research on the sense of smell and disgust for smells, that fits very well into this general framework, because what we have found is that people who are easily disgusted by odors, and especially body odors, they tend to have a more authoritarian disposition, which means that you want a traditional norms, little immigration, etc., and a strong leader, etc., all those things. So some people are more inclined to have those views than others, and those who do, they tend to be more disgusted by body odors. And this is something that we find all over the world, actually. So we've studied in all inhabited continents, we find this association. So it's not just North America.
I remember a conversation with my dad years ago. He told me, Paul, the hardest part about saving money is starting. Back then, we didn't have any smartphones or apps, says the boomer. You had to find a financial advisor, set up accounts, and honestly, it felt like it was only for the wealthy. But these days, it is different. You've heard me talk about Acorns before, and I'm proud to say that today's episode is sponsored by Acorns. Acorns is a financial wellness app that makes it easy to start saving and investing for your future. You don't need to be rich. Acorns lets you get started with the spare money you've got right now, even if all you've got is spare change. You don't need to be an expert. Acorns recommends a diversified portfolio that can help you weather all of the market's ups and downs. You just need to stick with it. And Acorns makes that easy too. Acorns automatically invests your money, giving it a chance to grow with time. Now, personally, I've been using Acorns for a while. It helps me put a little bit away. I've even included my grandchildren. It's a small act, but it feels meaningful. And I know it will be for their lives. I've shown my children, not just my grandchildren, I've shown my children how to use it and start something for their own kids. That's 3 generations thinking about the future, all from a few extra coins here and there. That's the kind of ripple effect that matters. So sign up now and join over 14 million all-time customers who have already saved and invested over $25 billion with Acorns. Head to acorns.com/NOB. You know the drill. Head to acorns.com/NOB or download the Acorns app just to get started. Paid client endorsement. Compensation provides incentive to positively promote Acorns. Tier 1 compensation provided. Investing involves risk. Acorns Advisors LLC is an SEC-registered investment advisor. View important disclosures at acorns.com/NOB. Dr. Jonas Olofsson is our guest today, written the wonderful new book, The Forgotten Sense, The New Science of Smell and the Extraordinary Power of the Nose. I really enjoyed it. I just want to recommend it so highly to our audience, Dr. Olofsson, but I'm not the only one. The book is getting great reviews online, and I found this one that I just thought was wonderful by an author that I know, a New York Times bestselling author. His name is Mark Biodowanek, and he's written the book Stuff Matters, a bestseller on the New York Times. He says, I love this book. It reawakened my sense of smell more than any zesty body wash or freshly brewed cup of coffee. Those are 2 scents that I know very well and very real sense to me. But I thought that was a wonderful review. And so congratulations on the book and all of your research. Thanks again for sharing it with me. I just have a few more questions for you, Dr. Olofsson. I want to talk about memory, in particular for our older age listeners and our audience, because smell, as you point out, is tied to memory. And I wonder if there's a kind of a smell training that might take place that could help keep our brain active. Should we include different types of scents in our kind of overall approach to kind of brain cognition and even brain training?
Yeah, there is some research that seems to point to a role for the sense of smell here. So what we have done in my research team is that we devised a type of memory game where you find matching pairs. So it's like the children's game of memory, where you find matching birds or whatever it is that you're working with. But we use tea smells, so we have different tea jars, and we ask people to play this game every day, and we see that there are benefits in their sense of smell, but also in their general memory performance after doing that. And they have our participants play for 40 days. And now we are expanding that through collaborations with other researchers to older adults and people with who feel like they are losing their memory. So they are training with this memory game. And we see some preliminary results in the same direction also for this group. But there are also some studies that have used smell training in a simpler way, where you just smell household odors. You can use odors from the spice rack, odors that you like, smell them for 5 to 10 minutes, and you have a set of them, and you change them. You smell them for, let's say, 20 seconds, and then you change, and you go through them all. And you do this 2 times a day for at least 4 months. So it's like a simple type of smell exercise, but it lasts for longer. And those people tend to report that they feel more vital and that they perform better on some cognitive tests even. So this is something that I think is really extraordinary. And obviously we need more research on it, but there is research certainly that points to smell training, even a type of more simple odor stimulation. If you do it repeatedly for a longer period of time, that this can have benefits on your brain functions more generally.
It's a fascinating subject, really. I just love this because we tend to think of, the powerful senses that are us as being hearing, certainly one, and then seeing is the other, and that's kind of the almost the common thought. But your research suggests that the smell really gives a more powerful a grasp in terms of understanding who we are and how we behave. And so I wonder if you could talk to us a little bit about smell's influence in our daily activities and in decision making throughout the day.
Hmm. That's a complex question to address. Which aspect are you thinking more in particular about?
Well, I think I will tell you that personally, I'm someone who is very sensitive to smell, and just out of we're on camera, and just out of camera range, I have a bottle of oil with 5 sticks placed in it, and the sticks are submerged within lavender oil, and I think that not only calms me, but I think it does make me a little sharper, and
Yeah.
it's there all day. I don't even have to see it necessarily to
Right.
feel kind of its impact. And as I was reading
Right.
your book, I thought to myself, that element of what I do and what my office is all about is more powerful than a because we hear the term that we want to make these grand statements each day, and so I don't necessarily need that, but I do need this lavender smell, and so
Yeah.
it got me thinking that
Yeah.
that might be an example of how I'm using smell every day to kind of
Right.
help
Right.
direct my own decisions.
Right. No, now I understand where you're
Uh-huh.
coming from, and that's a great example of how smells are a great mood setter,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they kind of calibrate us and puts us in the right mindset for the task that we are about to do. And sometimes this is packaged as aromatherapy,
Yeah.
and this what I criticize a little bit in my book is
Yeah. Yeah.
is this type of aromatherapy where people say that a particular odor will have this effect
Hmm.
on anyone.
Hmm.
But I think that you have to think about it from your own point of view. The odors are very powerful mood setters, and they can help your concentration, and they can make you feel more relaxed. But it has to, like, you are the starting point of that
Uh-huh.
process. So you have to select the smells that works for you, not what it says on the bottle. You know
Uh-huh.
what I mean? So in that sense, I think that aromatherapy is good because it helps people to be aware of the smells around us and how they affect us. But there is, in my opinion, it's not so much about the specific odor molecule that does it. It's your personal experience and your memories and associations and your preferences. That's kind of how you interact with the smell. That's what's going to bring out the positive result, if you know what I mean.
I do, and I appreciate that, and thanks for letting me, kind of personalize it
Uh,
a little bit.
yeah,
Sometimes I'm
yeah,
slow to do that, but I
yeah.
my own kind of ideas about smell certainly shaped, my interest in this
Mhm.
subject, which has allowed me to learn so much more about its depth and certainly how it connects with me.
Mhm.
And you're right,
Yeah.
I have tried several different types of oil. I don't like burning. I don't like smoke.
Right.
Some of the aerosol sprays I don't really like, but just these sticks,
Mm.
which allow the oil to kind of work their way up. They offer enough of a slight scent that I kind of feel that,
Yeah.
and so it's
Right.
been very
Right.
very interesting for me that it's
Yeah.
been kind of a nice springboard into this subject of
Yeah.
the forgotten scents.
Yeah.
So earlier in our conversation, you brought up the idea of connections with people, and that there's a connection in nature that occurs too,
Mm.
and
Mm.
and relationships can be based on
Mm.
kind of a smell and certain aspects of that. Now, I wonder if you share a little bit more about that and tell us about how smell impacts the bond that is connected to the people that we love.
Mm. Yeah. One of the quotes that I cite in my book is from a person a Swedish woman who emailed me and described how her boyfriend's smell became after COVID became repulsive to her, and how it was such a detriment to their relationship, and it was because of these smell distortions that she suffered as a uh, after rehabilitating from COVID-19. So the sense of smell in this is an extreme example, but people tend to value the body odor of a presumptive partner as more or less a deal breaker, and this is especially true in women. If you don't like the person's smell, you don't really want to be close to them. So for men, the smell is sort of lower on the list usually, but it's nevertheless a it is a strong influence on who we choose to partner with, and those who lose their sense of smell, they often report that their relationship is less strong. They often report that they have trouble in their marriage, and that their sexual lives are worse than those who have a retained sense of smell. So these are quite important things, and it's unclear exactly why this is, if it is directly related to the smell loss, or if it is a type of depression or mood change that makes you less able to connect emotionally with your partner. But it is a clear association between the smell loss and these negative effects on our love lives and our sexual lives, whether it is a direct effect or indirect through depression.
I mentioned lavender, and certainly, there are a lot of these kind of aromatherapy type smells. And I wonder, in your research, did you come across any particular scent that is really underrated?
Hmm, that's a good
Triggering,
question.
a connection, or,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
popped up in your research more and more?
Yeah, so one of the odors that people often have memories from is tar.
Mm.
And so older people have associations with tar for like tarring a boat, and it's sort of like related to going on a boat, or some kind of like pleasant childhood memory. And tar is maybe not usually seen as a positive odor, but people have strong and positive memories that are rekindled by that smell. So that would be one.
Yeah, that's fascinating. My father was a smoker, and I always associated the smell of tobacco as kind of having, uh, a harmful impact on him, caused his death ultimately. But as I smell it today, it brings back, a lot of those kind of memories to me. You
Yeah.
open your book with kind of a very personal story about the subject of surströmming. Am I pronouncing
Mhm.
it with surströmming?
Yeah, yeah.
And that's a fit for everyone. I had to look this up too, of fermented fish from your native Sweden. Why was it important to you to kind of ground the science in some of these personal stories? How do our listeners, kind of take away from that?
Yeah. I think I realized in writing the book, so the book originally had a completely different story to start with, but I felt eventually that the fermented herring was a perfect fit, because it is a smell that is quite divisive or polarizing. Most people hate it, and we are a few kind of hardliners who really love fermented herring. And whether or not we like the smell per se, the associations and all, like the rituals and the family traditions and the context in which the herring is eaten, that makes the smell so positive. And that I realized that kind of encapsulates the message that I have in my research and in the book in general, that the sense of smell is like a way that we construct our perceptions of smell. We attach to them our memories and our desires and our personalities and all these things. We sort of read that into the smell. Is not just a smell. It tells us about who we are, and it's a very personal sense, I would say. So I think it was fitting to start the book with that.
Dr. Jonas Olofsson has been our guest today, written this wonderful new book, The Forgotten Sense, The New Science of Smell and the Extraordinary Power of the Nose. Much more than just aromatherapy, just a lot of great information. Congratulations on the book. So interesting to learn all of these connections, Dr. Olofsson. I will just be selfish for a moment and say that as you do more work on this subject, we'd love to have you back. I know our audience is just going to love this subject, so certainly put us on your list, please. But thank you for joining us today. Again, my best to you. Thanks for sharing the book with me. We will have links so that our audience can find out more about Dr. Olofsson, his wonderful new book, The Forgotten Sense, and all of his work. Thanks, Dr. Olofsson. Have a great rest of your day, but thank you so much for being so generous.
Thank you, Paul. It was great to be there.
Thanks so much for listening today. Remember, our episode was sponsored, which we are very grateful for, by Acorns. Check out Acorns in our show notes today for more information. That, of course, was our guest today, Dr. Jonas Olofsson, author of The Forgotten Sense, sharing his passion for the overlooked world of smell, how it connects us, shapes us, and yes, even reveals our politics. If you've ever caught a whiff of a scent that transported you decades into the past, or if you, like so many, experienced smell loss during the pandemic, you know just how much this sense matters. And thanks to Dr. Olofsson's work, we now have a better understanding of how to care for it, train it, and value it more. You can listen to this episode along with all of our previous conversations at notold-better.com. Be sure to follow us on social media. We're at @NotOldBetter on Twitter, X, and NotOldBetter on Instagram. Be well, everybody. Be safe. Let's talk about better. The Not Old Better show on radio and podcast, our Inside Science interview series. Thank you so much. Remember, this episode was a production of NOBS Studios. I'm Paul Vogelsang. Thanks for listening, and I hope you'll join me again next time.